Those who pilot the Buccaneer can often be heard using the phrase ride or die when talking about their questionable lifestyle. But for a group of people that fly a fighter that lacks an ejection seat, perhaps ride or die is more an observation of reality than a philosophical stance. Before Drake had even formed, the Cutlass was to complete a design. The original intent was to simply sell the design to the military, or perhaps produce the ship on behalf of the UAE. Either way, the design lost the competition that it was made to win, which was a competition to create a cost-effective, militia-friendly vessel to outfit the more remote worlds of the UAE with. Jan Dredge, the then soon-to-be CEO of Drake, didn't take this loss in stride, and instead forged a company with the Cutlass's designers to do it their damn selves. The UAE clearly picked the wrong ship though, as the Cutlass is now amongst the most common vessels in the fleets of small home organized elements, including pirates, where a full 2/3 of all vessels are Cutlasses. As the Cutlass's popularity exploded, the companies did as well, and more vessels began production. First were variants of the Cutlass, followed by the modular and highly popular Caterpillar, and eventually Drake's first dedicated, true single-seat fighter and red-headed stepchild of the corporation, the seemingly discordant but quite scrappy Buccaneer. This ship, and subject of today's analysis, was originally pitched as a rough and tumble fighter, designed with the express goal of supporting other Drake ships with light and agile footwork, mixed with the ability to disgorge withering volumes of firepower. And while it certainly does float and sting, anyone intimate with Drake knows that they're prone to mincing words a bit, and when it comes to the Buccaneer, some consider its sales pitch to be a list of things it lacks rather than a list of what it has. In many ways, the Buccaneer simply doesn't match up to its design goals. One of their most prominent claims is that the Buccaneer is cheap, but the Buck costs nearly the same as a Hornet, which is a full-blown military-style carrier fighter. When equipped with full Gatlings, the Hornet and Buck do basically identical damage, but the Hornet is more durable, highly armored, and comes with an ejection seat which the Buccaneer lacks. It's worth noting that the Buccaneer is combat-ready out of the box, while the Hornet requires some equipment before it's really ready to fight, and these upgrades and the slightly higher price tag of the Hornet end up creating a bit more of a gap when it's all said and done. But the fact that you can even compare a militia ship to a proper military fighter is a bit telling that the Buck is simply overpriced. In the same pitch, they'll tell you that the ship is perfect for militia operations due to its reliable systems, relatively low-tech systems, and ease of repair. Even though they say this, the ship remains a surprising departure from the conventional Drake wisdom of making their ships modular and multi-role, which has become the cornerstone of militia philosophy. Every ship must be able to fulfill various functions. For example, the Cutlass can haul, fight, do long-range patrols, serve crews, deploy ground vehicles, and a myriad of other small niche uses. The Buccaneer does one thing and one thing only: be a fighter. Combine this with the Buck's lack of durability and its silhouette ruining jumbo engines that become big bullet magnets, and you end up with a somewhat fragile one-trick pony that's worse at getting its pilot back home alive than similarly priced vessels that perform the same role. But that isn't to say the Buck doesn't do some things right. For example, the Buccaneer is one of the best single-crew gimbal boats in the game. It's actually kind of impressive that the Buck retains the agility and speed of a light fighter while dishing out more gimbal firepower than a ship with its agility can put out fully fixed. When it comes to fighter-to-fighter engagements, gimbaled weapons can often be better because they convey a certain consistency of firepower. Especially in team-oriented fights, dealing consistent damage to the target can be a great strategy, as a group pressuring a single fighter will kill that fighter in short order, which is a tactic that doesn't always work with fixed ships. This gimbaled advantage also makes the ship far better for the majority of us that just aren't ace pilots, allowing us that extra edge needed to at least pose a threat to these meta chasers, which is exactly why the elitists in the SC world hate auto gimbals so much. It raises the skill floor and prevents the average playing from becoming just easy pickings. But should someone choose to go fully fixed with a Buck, it's got you covered. The massive spinal amount allows you to seriously thrash some armored targets, and grants the ability to use a certain gun, which at the time of this video defines the meta of heavy weapons. The truth is, at least in my opinion, that the Buck isn't really a poor fighter so much as it is a misunderstood one. It's a ship that falls prey to the mindset that everyone needs to get a hold of the absolute best stuff, even if it requires a disproportionate amount of effort and investment to utilize. The Buccaneer is uniquely able to capitalize on swarm tactics to a degree that no other ship really can, as its consistent accuracy and solid firepower allows a Buccaneer pilot to dish out good damage while devoting a chunk of their focus on evasion of incoming fire without sacrificing that damage output. The Buccaneer is, for entirely separate reasons, a wolfpack fighter like the Vanguard is. It's best in teams, be it small flights of fighters or full-blown swarms. The best way to demonstrate this is to look at how the Buck matches up against other ships. First, it should probably go without saying that this ship's main job isn't really hitting bigger targets, it's about smashing other fighters. With that being said though, if it uses a fully fixed fit, it can dish out quite a bit of pain to bigger ships all the same. The three matchups we're going to be looking at are the Arrow, the Hornet, and the Vanguard. And as a quick aside, I would like to point out that this strictly is my opinion. If you have had different experiences with these ships, that's absolutely fine, but I'm going to call this as I see it. This really should go without saying, but I can already see the flame war in the comments. The Arrow is often considered one of the best fighters for people who are purely relying on their personal skills, as it complements a skill-based brawler quite well. However, there are ultimately limits on what any given ship can actually do, regardless of skill. While it's true that arrows can be dangerous to a buck, the Buccaneer has a lot of advantages that make it come out on top more often than not. As stated before, the Buccaneer can bring more firepower gimbaled than many fighters can fixed, and this is one such example. The Buccaneer categorically has more firepower, as well as more HP, a faster top speed, and more shields. The Arrow attempts to compensate with better agility and a smaller silhouette, but in the end, the Arrow is fully outclassed by the Buccaneer. The Buck simply has to stay composed, keep pressure on, abuse their gimbals, and the Arrow's shields will collapse, followed soon after by their hull. Next, in a more even matchup, the Hornet. Hornets have similar firepower and profile, but they're simply much tougher boats. In this matchup, a Buccaneer pilot must rely on the same thing that the Arrow would have been relying on in the previous matchup, which is the agility to dodge firepower. This is a ship you're going to have to gently test before fully committing to alone, because if it is also sporting an anti-fighter gimbal setup, this may be a losing fight. Still, it would be a pitched battle, and if you can keep the pressure on while forcing them off target often enough, the Buccaneer can prevail cleanly in this matchup. Finally, we consider a more consistently used ship, the Vanguard. The Vanguard can be a hard target to match up against as it's very durable and can pack some really stout firepower, but it is by nature usually ran fixed, although some do gimbal the nose gun. When fighting the Vanguard, the main objective is to mitigate your much lesser durability by taking less damage. This may seem like it should be obvious, but you have to deal with far more damage and can accept far less. So if you simply square up and trade with a Vanguard, you're gonna die. You also have to be wary of missiles and try to stay close to prevent getting dumped on by them, as Vanguards sometimes have more missiles than you have countermeasures. In any case, the general strategy is to target the engines first, as it has less HP and cripples the target. Yes, you ultimately have to deal more damage overall, but the damage you have to deal after the engine goes is far easier than how much effort you have to put in to shoot a Vanguard's body down from the start. The Buccaneer certainly has a place in the meta in my opinion, but this ship seems to have been misunderstood. At its heart, the Buccaneer is a pirate ship meant to clear the air fast or die trying. There are some improvements to be made though. For starters, the cost of the Buck needs to drop in game by at least a few 100,000 credits to make it more viable in the risk-reward calculations that players naturally go through when picking a ship. The complaint I have about heat is the same complaint I have about the game at large. Things overheat too fast, and ships recover too quickly as well. In an actual vehicle, overheating is often something that takes a fair amount of time to get to, and really messes things up when it happens. This should be included in game to emulate the risk-reward dynamic as well. Finally, the Buck is in desperate need of some skins. Please, show our favorite little pirate fighter some love. So after we release these videos, which will be from here on out, coming out on Mondays, we will be going live on our Twitch stream directly after. You can find the link down below. We are going to be moving away from doing Twitch like every day and more towards putting together videos on the days that I'm not on. Because it gives me a little bit more flexibility as far as my hours. My summertime life is just way too unpredictable for me to be online on Twitch every day. So I still want to make content, so I've decided to switch mostly to YouTube for now. When winter rolls back around, I'll probably focus more on Twitch, but for now, it's going to be mostly YouTube. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. If you want to come by and hang out on the Twitch, love to have you. If not, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for swinging by.